What would it mean to you if you could walk through life feeling invincible? That despite the things that go on in the world and in your personal life, that you can feel rock solid and grounded in who you are and have an internal state of peace that transcends anything in your external environment. This is like a martial art of the mind. What is it called? Advanced emotional mastery. And if you will choose to develop it, you will unlock abundance for yourself in your areas of life that maybe have been previously difficult or elusive for you, like health, wealth, and relationships. Today, I bring on my longtime friend, Dr. Ray Doctor, who has been a coach for the past 30 years, and who also holds a doctorate in clinical psychology. And we break down precisely what emotional mastery really is, how to know whether you have it, and when you don't, the techniques you need to develop it, and the benefits that will come into your life if you choose to walk this rare path. I'm your host, Eric Copeland, and welcome to another episode of The Music of Life. Dr. Ray, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. It's a crazy world right now. We have an election year we're in. We have all sorts of shenanigans going on with candidates. There's people are more triggered than ever on social media. You've had some recent experiences with that.
Who are you voting for? Because if you're not voting my way, I'm not going to be your friend. Goodbye.
Yeah. Can't think like me. We can't roll. So there's a lot of opportunities, really more so than I've ever seen in my lifetime, for there to be division and conflict. And I've just noticed this in my friends. Things have been coming up, and it's caused a difficulty in maybe feeling like you can be part of like the community or have a community. And it's just something I've noticed. So I know this is an area where you have a tremendous amount of expertise around. We talk about it a lot. And I wanted to dig in today of how we resolve division and conflict within ourselves and others, and the role that emotional mastery plays in that. Because, I know that emotional mastery is extremely important, because without it, you stay stuck. And I don't think people really understand and aren't seeing good role models, or how do you deal with difficult emotions as they come up. So I'm gonna throw the ball to you real quick. And what are your thoughts on that? And I'd love to hear what you think, or like why you think emotional mastery is such an important skill for people to have, especially, anytime, but especially today.
Well, I'm going to immediately trigger a bunch of people, because they're going to try to figure out whose side I'm on by what I'm going to say now. Because if I'm not speaking with that polarizing language, and I talk about a specific candidate or something in where it seems clearly left or right, then I must be the enemy. So what's interesting about my followers and people who seem to like what I have to say, even clients, is that it doesn't matter what side they're on, they seem to feel comfortable to talk to me. And they have this assumption I might be on their side. And the reason why they might believe this is because I can connect to their feelings and why they might believe this. I can connect to their family values and where they're coming from an open heart. And therefore, they don't experience judgment by me. They feel as though that I get them, I see them, which is very important. And the reason why I'm able to also listen to them objectively is because when they're communicating about something that they're bothered by, or that they believe in something, I am able to hold space for that, because I am in control of my emotions. I can even be a little bit triggered by that belief, because I can have an idea that it can create problems. However, because I'm aware of my emotions, I don't allow my emotions to dominate that person talking. I don't judge that person, and I will not try to make that person out to be wrong. Even if within my body, I truly disagree, because I'm aware of him or her versus how I choose to feel, how I want to feel. And that is self-mastery. And sure, I do get triggered sometimes. I don't always operate that way. And when I don't operate that way, it is because I haven't done my tuning in to the day. It could be where there's too many moving parts to where I have lost myself with the day or something. And so if I do have a charge from looking at social media or having a conversation with someone where it's not in alignment with me and I find myself to be reactionary, it is not so much because of what they're saying. It's that I am not, say, centered within myself. I am maybe not in my heart in that moment. It is because something's going on with me and they just happen to say that one thing. They happen to be that one person who cuts me off. But even so, if I'm in a good place and someone's in a hurry, while I might not want them to cut me off, I don't know that person. So I'm not going to give much energy to that stranger. So emotional mastery is about recognizing that, sure, my emotions could be a great guidance system to what feels right and what doesn't feel right. It's a great guidance system to direct us in our life towards the things that excite us and that we want, or potentially danger. But it's very important to recognize that what happens when we are emotionally stressed? What happens when we're creating feelings and negative narratives based off emotions alone? We might communicate in the most unhealthy way. We might blame others. We might attack others. We might have a very skewed way of interpreting a particular situation or conversation just because in this now moment, we don't feel good. And therefore, how we experience it emotionally is negative. But it doesn't mean that what that person's saying maybe is true or that there's anything about it that we need to do something about it. And so having a self-mastery and being in tune with our emotions, we're able to be more discerning. We don't allow our emotions to override things, to self-sabotage.
Would if I were to ask you, and I am asking you, what kind of abundance becomes available to you that if you when you master your emotions, like how does that affect your capacity to say manifest or create abundance in your life?
Well, I had a real-time moment with my partner, Nicole, and it had to do with our communication, and sometimes we're having power struggles. And there was a moment where emotionally I felt as though that we were, say, not in a flow, like maybe even fighting a lot. But emotionally, I maybe felt like we were fighting a lot. Logically, we're still growing and trying to work together. So instead of me saying we always fight or this is not working because I'm feeling shitty in this moment, we took pause and we actually connected today, and it was really beautiful. And we were able to expand. So in other words, I had an emotion today, so did she, but we didn't start planning out what's going to happen with our relationship. We didn't start making decisions that we need to do. It was more, hey, let's talk when we're more centered. But it's something was coming up. And so we were able to expand rather than break up. And not that we were moving in that direction, but what happens a lot with, say, couples is that they'll feel emotions and never examine them. They'll feel emotions and they'll think it's the partner's fault or where they're at, they're not supposed to be, and it sucks and whatever else. And so I see this in coupleships. I see this in business relationships. It could be where where a person isn't doing as much work as you do, but it is a feeling, such as you feel this. And it's just because they don't get up as early as you do. Does that sound like that actually happened with you and I, Eric, where I get up a lot earlier. I get up earlier than most people, like 4 to 5 a.m.
Yeah, you're better than me. What can I say?
But remember where I didn't say you're doing less work than me. I didn't say like, you're lazy and so forth. I said, like, I have to wait until you get up after me. But what if I said, I'm doing more work than you? And it's based off of how I feel because I've been up since 5. I have to wait until 8 o'clock until you get up. And it's just 3 hours after me. But you work later than I do. So it balances out. But if I don't see it, I might judge you instead of asking you, what's going on or what are you doing? I could just
video games.
Attack you. Yeah, and go, dude, you're lazy. And so, what's going on? I'm doing all the work. And so we have to recognize, there might not be truth to this story we're creating, but our emotions are feeling something maybe needs to be said.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is there's always two sides to this. There's the fact that you're just trying to, a person, if you're out there, you're trying to live your life, and you, like anyone else, have had goals, visions, dreams, things you want to do, or you're just trying to go about and operate in a way that you think is best or right. And inevitably in doing that, conflict arises. Someone feels that just what you want to protect as your natural way of being is somehow offensive to them. Or it might be where you feel like you're operating for your natural way of being, but really you're kind of projecting your opinion on someone, and they're just giving you resistance to that, and you're not seeing the role that you're playing and kind of like putting gasoline on that fire. And it's a very subtle thing I've noticed, Dr. Ray, where it's like it's a very easy trap to fall in, to become reactive to the emotions. So it kind of brings up this question of when the emotion arises, when you feel pissed off, angry, judged, whatever you want to call as, say, a negative emotion, how does a person develop because that's the moment where you discover whether you have mastery or whether you have room to grow. Like, what does mastery look like in that moment when my friend pissed me off, or someone didn't show up at my birthday, or something happened in a relationship, or I didn't get the raise I wanted, or I tried something and it failed? Like, what is that moment in your expertise? Like, how does someone flip that?
It takes practice before those events happen. As an example, if I were to work with a client who says that they're awkward in social situations and they seem to clam up when they approach women, well, there's a sequence to that before it happens, such as, let's say it's a man and he's attempting to approach this woman. When he is looking at her, he already has thoughts such as, she's out of my league. She's not going to talk to me. So then I will ask him, what do you have to feel and believe about yourself to even have those thoughts prematurely before you even approach this woman? I'm not good enough. I don't like rejection. Things like that. Then it might be, well, what would you have to believe about yourself? And that, of course, that man would say, it's true. So listen to what I just shared right there. So that person would either say affirmations. There would be maybe a meditation before he goes out until he's crystallized in that space. But it might look like this, where he he visualizes the idea of feeling confident anyway. He takes pause before he goes into a new social setting, and he just sees himself having fun anyway. And he just starts from that space. So in a way, if anything were to happen, he already has practiced a different way of being. Now, why this is important is because if I were just to share with you or anyone, when you are in reaction, just do this one thing, you're going to say, but when I'm in reaction, I'm not conscious. When I'm in reaction, I'm all over the place. So it's utterly important to practice the emotions that come up with those things that trigger you the most. So when they show up later on, if you're at the grocery store or you're in a social setting, you already consciously, you're above it a little bit. It becomes a lot easier. So for me, when I wasn't doing this work, of course I was reactionary. Of course I would say things just because I was just pissed off in that moment. But because I have practiced myself into recognizing when I feel the most insecure and I allow my body to feel that, then I'm not, say, avoiding that when I'm out and about, like such as I don't have this protective layer that's going to be defensive and would easily attack someone because I feel afraid. So it's important to start with recognizing and asking questions such as, what things piss me off the most? What posts trigger me the most? What women do I get triggered by? Why? What does that say about me? Every one of us have certain things that trigger us. And there's a story about ourselves that we tell ourselves. And so if we're not conscious of that story, then when we meet that one person again, when we see that one post again, when we see and hear that one video again, we find ourselves going, that asshole, she's a bitch, or I don't want to go to that place, ever again. And we create this cycle to where we just think that that's just who we are. I don't like these type of people, rather than owning the experience or idea that when I'm around these types of people or situations, I feel very small. I feel unsuccessful.
Yeah. So you bring up this, the idea that we have a story that we kind of project onto the situation, our interpretation, our worldview, our belief system, our beliefs. And we talk a lot about the idea of hidden beliefs. You have a book, All It Takes Is One. That's like, I'll drop a link to it here. Actually, it's a really great read for anyone who wants to try to uncover. Yeah, there we go. Who wants to uncover what might be hidden beliefs? Because that's something I want to get into a little bit too. Is like, you've worked with thousands and thousands of clients. I find myself in coaching situations. I've, got my coaching certification. I do a weekly group, and I've been more and more immersed with it. And I know what I've seen is that there's a skill unto itself of becoming conscious of hidden beliefs, and your emotions actually are your clues. And I think that's a link in the chain that I had to learn, and that people are just not taught. It's like, you don't learn this at school. It's not likely your parents taught it to you because they didn't know to teach it to you. And even in religion, it can fail at that a lot of times. It's not really teaching you this concept of like becoming accountable for the story that you're telling yourself about a situation. And there's this kind of magic that happens when your mind can finally comprehend and see the source of your emotion, in that it's just a belief. And then what can follow that is like relief. And that's like an amazing process. And I know that's really kind of the fundamentals of your coaching that you do. So what do you do to help people? And I know the book is obviously one thing, but like, what would you say to people watching right now? Like, how can they use their emotions to become more aware of, like, because sometimes you may think it's what happened it's the driver pull out in front of you or something that's said in a relationship, but really it's unprocessed. Like, you're still feeling pain about something you haven't really dealt with from maybe the past. You're still carrying it with you into that situation, and you're not aware of it.
Well, when it comes to emotions, people have the idea, this is a generalization, but people have the idea that it's important, it's special, it's unique, it defines them, and therefore you don't want to dismiss them. And they're looked at oftentimes from the idea of who the person is. As an example, sure, there can be a person who seems angry all the time, but I would say at the core of this human being that they're not angry. Somehow they have they are in fight or flight. They haven't created more awareness. They haven't healed their trauma, and therefore it shows up in their consciousness as being guarded, afraid, and maybe defensive. And therefore, because they carry this in their body, they interpret the world against, him or her. And therefore, if you are feeling that way consciously, then you are probably protecting yourself all the time. You're basically like a caged animal. And if you were to, say, capture a raccoon, like you put a cage out there and you caught this raccoon or another animal, and it had been there in that cage for a day, even if you opened up the cage and you had food in your hand, or if you were to put your hand in there, even with the intentions of releasing this animal that got trapped or that whatever, they're injured and you're trying to help them, they more than likely they'll bite you because they are in survival mode. They are afraid. They don't know where you're coming from. And people who have unhealed trauma, people who have been beaten down by life could be that way. But that's not who they are. That's their protection mechanism. And so now this leads to the emotions and what you asked me is that if you interpret a text message, a movie, a meme, or anything around you, if you experience something that doesn't feel good, that whatever you're thinking about it doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean that it's whatever's happening in that moment is going on outside of you. Because remember, if you're fine in that moment, it's not like this meme jumped out of your computer, out of your phone, and just triggered you. And then it was like having a gun to your head. And like if you really had a gun to your head and you were frightened, there's some part of you that has you're not aware of why these things are happening, but your emotions are letting you know something needs to be healed. Your emotions are letting you, they're like what you said, they're an indicator to examine why is that happening. It's not bad or good. And if you grew up in a home where you were judged for emotions, if it was a hyper masculine home where they say we don't do that, then you don't have practice to feel them in a positive way. You apologize to people when you cry, you push that shit down and so forth. Then there's people who just spend their entire day in emotions and nothing gets done because of just how they feel. They can't move into action or anything else. But emotions are the first step. It's the first, part of our, our physical apparatus to let us know that our check engine light is on and why. And how can we approach this with love? Because remember, if we feel angry, how can we love ourselves anyway? If we feel sadness, how can we love ourselves anyway? And if we truly believe that this person is an asshole, we should love ourselves anyway. What I mean by that is when we project anger onto that person, remember, our bodies are feeling anger. Our bodies are feeling stress. Whenever we think we're angry at other people and we think it's a good reason, remember, they might be clueless of what we're thinking or feeling. They might not even know us, but we're generating in our body negative emotions. And so whenever we're generating negative emotions in our beautiful bodies, we should really pay attention and ask the question, why?
Yeah, something, I've noticed just in myself doing this work is when we have those times where we have reacted and maybe we've taken it out on someone or made a decision that was a bit unconscious or knee-jerk, it creates a cascade of reactions out in the world too. You know, some people, you might call that like karma, or maybe a modern term would just be drama, right? And I think that's something that can make it difficult for people too, because not only do you need to admit to yourself that you are reactive, but you have to own that, you might have to own that with others, through apologies and things like that. And, but the payoff I've noticed is like, I mean, it comes down to questions like, do you think you're going to move better throughout life if you're in a state of peace or in a state of reactivity all the time? And it's a weird thing that confronting your weakness creates strength, right? And I think this can be in a very kind of, I don't know, Western culture where maybe we have diminished the value of emotions, and then now they're even like, it's more like emotions are important, but they're more encouraging people to project them than actually truly process them.
And can you say that again? Dude, that is so good. Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're
seeing. The cultures encourage you to project them, and saying that, it's trying to say, it's like the culture's saying your emotions are important and you should project them. And we're like, oh, because it's like, your emotions are important, so you should investigate them within yourself. Because this is what, even if we look at the like ascended masters, like Jesus, for example, talked about removing the beam from your own eye before getting the speck out of your brother's eye, or learning to love your enemies. And, it can be a very challenging thing to do, to have compassion both for yourself and realize that sometimes you've been reactive in the past. That creates forgiveness, but realize when other people have hurt you, that forgiveness isn't about condoning, but it's about not allowing yourself to get pulled down into that reactivity and play the same game that person is playing, and realizing that person is in pain. What you've experienced is their pain body or their wounded side. And if you play into that, that just reveals that you're wounded as well. So this can be very confusing for a lot of people whenever you're not trained how to do it. But the benefits of it is that, I mean, there's so many: better health, better relationships. I mean, it's just like, imagine like how would your life be if you truly felt at peace in your nervous system, and you realize that no matter what situation you got in, that you could always find that peace, and it never depended on the external circumstances, that you could develop that kind of muscle. That takes some real faith and trust in the self, to do that. But there's a payoff. So what would you say to someone who's, because I mean, obviously if anyone's watching to this point, you're obviously open-minded enough and probably are interested in metaphysics and manifestation and all these things. And I think we all have areas of our lives where we know that we're not, our light isn't shining as bright as it could be because of maybe stuff we haven't really kind of dealt with. And it can be it's not exactly the kind of shit you want to put on your resume or your dating profile. How does one approach these things with compassion and with self-love?
Well, I mentioned to you in my book in a previous conversation we had, where most of our issues stem from not feeling loved. Bottom line. In the first exercise where I offer sentences to, like these sentence stems to finish, is the one that is all about what love meant to you, such as, what did love mean to me? When did I experience love in my house? Love meant I would get this or that. I was afraid of love when blah, blah, blah. Like there's like these 10 questions I have in my book. All it takes is one. And I'm bringing it up not to promote my book, but that alone basically will be almost like getting right to the roots, the beginning of things, of why it is that you might not be authentic, or why it is that you're afraid and guarded and everything else. And so, as an example, many people will, it's become more and more popular. They're starting to use psychedelics to explore their consciousness. Even psychotherapists are incorporating psychedelics because they say it's like, doing, I forgot what they have said, and just don't quote me
like
on
10
this.
years of therapy in a single session. I've heard that one.
Yeah, you've heard that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting how they use that, because I understand what they're saying, but I used to describe how I work, and I used to say, it's like I'm a coach, but it could be equivalent to therapy on steroids. And people that got what I was saying, because it just gets right to the point. It really opens things up. And so what typically happens is, and why people say feel better, and they're able to see themselves, like when they say, I now know what it means to love yourself, or they feel self-actualized, is because in those ceremonies, or just taking psychedelics, it's where your nervous system relax. Sure, your brain is maybe feeling some euphoria also from that experience, but it's as if you step out of your body a little bit and you can see the story you continue to tell yourself, or the job that you hate, or the toxic relationship that you're in. And you might see it not with judgment, with more awareness of, oh, this is a story, this is a narrative, it's not true. And so when you have that moment where you can, I guess you could say, like, step away from what you perceive in that moment as a problem, then you feel like you have choices. You feel like you can make better choices. Most people who keep making poor choices are still in it. They see nothing but themselves in survival, and their emotions are the driver. That's it. And it's like a train with no tracks. Imagine the train being just emotions, the dark feminine, and it's going nowhere. And the tracks being like the healthy masculine. I'm not saying masculine as far as men, but I'm talking about our own guidance and where we have clarity of where we want to go. Because when, like, say, we sabotage that one relationship again, or a situation that seems like we've done it before, we have this moment sometimes with clarity, and we ask ourselves, like, why the fuck did I do that? What happened? There's your consciousness kind of going, wait a minute, you were out of control. That was you, and that you were in your shit in that moment. And that's what I'm talking about. So when people maybe do the psychedelics, they're, instead of in a healthy, hopefully container, they're able to go, oh, this is who I really am, but this is where I can go sometimes and lose myself. And in this work that you and I do, it's the same thing. It's asking the questions such as, what does love really mean to you? How much do you really feel supported by life? How often do you really feel seen? How happy are you really with your life? What thoughts do you say to yourself before you go to bed? And so just to have to, by taking personal responsibility and asking yourself those questions, it's going to pull you back from your reactions, your emotions. And so that's why I wrote the book also. It goes through the entire process of kind of peeling back all these stories in a very sober, simple, loving way.
Yeah. So I kind of want to inject a little bit of modern culture. I'm feeling drawn towards that subject a little bit more, because I mentioned earlier at the beginning that we're this is how I see kind of some of the elements on the stage, right? That we have to confront, and we're all going to have different relationships with. We have things like irresponsibility in financial markets over many years, many decades, leading to inflation. We saw a lot of irresponsibility around during the pandemic. There's a lot of division over how whether someone has sovereignty over their body in terms of what they choose to do in order to promote health. We see a lot of emotional reactivity, on the political stage. um, versus, grounded, rational conversations. There's a lot of, in the frustration in the dating and relationship world, these kind of things that show up. And these are all things that exist, and that we all have different relationships with these things. What do you think some of our modern culture today reveal in terms of how you see culture reacting, people reacting with the increased sensitivity, with the triggering, with these things? What do you think that reveals about some of the hidden beliefs that we kind of experience on a national level and a cultural level? What are some of those common hidden beliefs that might be driving some of these?
I'd love to invite you into that container yourself, because I've never done this with you. And so, Eric.
Guinea pig time?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So, can I have you close your eyes for a second?
Sure.
So, with everything you just shared about the uncertainty and the lack, the not being able to have own sovereignty over our bodies and stuff like that, allow that to be personal for you. Like, why would you even be saying these things, such as, you're in a safe place right now and your basic needs are met. You have good relationships with many people and your parents. However, this is concerning for you. I know you're not a person where you are paying attention to what's happening always outside of yourself, as to determine how you want to feel and where life is going to take you. But you see the triggering. You see these conversations in a political arena. How does it touch you so deeply? Like how do you feel it could impact your work, your finances, your well-being, your relationships? What comes up for you?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I think at the core of it is I feel a deep sense of gratitude and for the work that we talk about, that we do. I know the potential in it. And I've had to just have compassion for I can see people like in pain. It's a desire to have people, including myself, to know that despite what's going on, that there's actually hope and there's processes. There's an even darker side that can show up as maybe even a frustration. And sometimes my thing to do is to have compassion for those that even I might perceive as the perpetrator, or to bless them as well, to make sure love is shining in that direction, so I stay balanced. So I can see it certainly has more to do with my desire to see people have harmonious relationships.
Yes. And if they were not to have that, how could that impact you negatively, emotionally, spiritually?
I could see it and I've experienced it as creating what I perceive as frivolous or unnecessary division when there could be community, making it maybe more challenging to get people together to be willing to open up. I see there can be a certain loneliness at times where it creates a desire in me to be around and have friends in community where I can open up about deeper, just more real things. And to me, it's not even deep. It's just the truth, without playing the surface game.
Would you say that there's times that you feel alone or disconnected because, a lot of people right now are guarded, or that you're not sure if it'll be received or turn into a debate, but it's where there's this uncertainty because a lot of people are trying to pick a side when you are attempting to be in the middle ground in that harmony, and that there are people you love in which they're fighting over things that maybe they don't need to fight over.
It's like, what was the Family Matters, Urkel? can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
I've had to confront a sense of projected like responsibility to where it's made me consider what is my role as this like peacemaker and learning to detach and let go and allow because if I come from reactivity, it's been a good opportunity for me to deepen my faith and surrender and like love, like despite like to make sure and catch even maybe some of the judgments that are coming up in me.
This is really good. So people are listening to this. Is that look at the learning from that, the golden nuggets that you just shared. You've become more compassionate. So I would say that this is a perfect example of healthy personal responsibility. So I didn't plan this with Eric. We're very close, and that we are both going through the same thing. So even your healing kind of created something within me because I resonate with that same story. And that is, I do feel like while I'm a very joyful person, I do feel sometimes alone or disconnected because when I see family members arguing or I see people on social media, I don't want to go near that. I want to get in the middle of a dogfight. So I just stay here. But yet there's parts of both these people I love. And so it's where I've had to choose situations or friends and maybe even keep them separate because they're so polarized. That doesn't feel good. I've never had to do that. What I also love, and I want people to hear this as well, who are experiencing value from this, is how instead of talking negatively how people are, if you notice that Eric is basically connecting to what they might be afraid of and have compassion and to come out of this with a bigger open heart. And therefore, because of this, I recognize that you're not polarized as much as well.
It creates something I'll say that's unique to anyone who, especially if you're a coach or someone. One of the things you'll have to confront, and it's an opportunity, it's a challenge, not a problem. But one of the challenges as you develop mastery, this is something that can happen. Is like you do find yourself being the mediator a lot because you're kind of like the Switzerland amongst your friends. You still have your opinions and thoughts, but it's like people don't feel, in my experience is because people don't feel judged, I'll get both sides opening up to me, and it kind of puts you in this position where you can, because you've been given the truth, you see the opportunity. Well, if both sides can understand this, there could be resolution. So I always find myself encouraging them to be honest with each other or whatever, but it does create this energy coming towards me of, I trust you, and they'll open up to me. And that does evoke this sense of responsibility. Well, that's been mirrored to me. I've obviously attracted that. What do I do with it? I guess that's why I got a life coaching certification and creating a YouTube channel and put myself in positions where that can create abundance for me, So
yes,
so it's creating opportunity.
I created a post that was one of my better ones, and I had nothing but positive responses. And however, there was one woman who took what I shared out of context, inviting me in to look inward, said I was communicating in an unhealthy way. And so first off, keep in mind where I didn't ask this person to coach me. And she turned this whole post into something more about herself. And she felt the need to tell me how I should have done it and what she thought about it. And then I responded with how this was a boundary thing. And I use the analogy that this would be equivalent to me having a backyard and me having a nice garden. And there might be flowers here or plants that she doesn't like. But, I keep my yard clean and it doesn't get into her space. And just imagine that she walks by and because she did point out some really good things about the post also, but it'd be equivalent to her saying that I don't think that rose bush should go there. The roadies should, give me like her opinion. So I'm saying that, and she still came at me, even after me being really polite. And I just happened to look at her Facebook page for the first time. And I saw that her son died last year. I think he might have been 17. And immediately when I saw that, I just thought to myself, I have no idea what the fuck she's going through. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what she's seeing on my post. I have no idea like what it would be like to lose a child really young. And therefore, this is going to get a pass. Mm-hmm. And it was a moment where I also stepped back and went, she's still given her opinion. And the reason why I'm sharing this is that I happen to be fortunate enough to even look. Usually if I feel like someone's trolling me, I just end up just deleting a comment and it's done. If someone's always harassing me and they're rude, I will unfriend them, block them, or whatever it is. But in this case, I saw that and went, wow. And I think it's very important for all of us to recognize that we don't know what other people are going through. We don't know how they're interpreting what we say, even in an audio recording like this. For me, this seems very clear. For me, I feel like we're coming from a place of kindness. But for a person who's going through something and they're feeling really a lack of kindness in their life, they can find something that we're saying or doing where they feel like we're doing something towards them in a negative way as well. We don't know.
Yeah, I like the perspective that you had, because like I know we had talked, you can have your moment of frustration and anger. Like, who's this person to be like mocking my garden over here? I didn't even ask for their opinion, right? And that's like a real anger you're feeling. But rather than projecting on her, you were willing. It reminds me of seek first to understand, and then to be understood. And that's like where you overcome the ego's desire to like, I need to make this person feel the pain that they made me feel. That's kind of, it's a power move, get even kind of a feeling. But through having the compassion, you realize there's even no need for that. There really isn't a need. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve the other person. There's no, when you can rationally look at it and make a rational decision that it doesn't yield any fruits that you want in your life. It only creates more of the same thing. And it's like, when you can learn to do this, it's like you're putting an armor on. And even though life can be a minefield and shit can be blasting around you, it's like you're cool. It's like you're able to get through it. And that's the mastery component of it. Like, how are you going to step into your dreams and your vision if every little landmine that goes off blows your legs off?
Yes.
Right.
Well, Sam Morris, who you interviewed before, he said something today, which was mind blowing. And it was so simple. Maybe I was just ready to hear it, but he said that because we were talking about the coaching industry, and he said, parts of me doesn't really want to keep posting. I don't need to let people know that I'm wise or I know more about this or anything. And he's a master. And in other words, it was almost like permission to not even share my thoughts because it really didn't matter. I mean, that's true wisdom. That's another level of self-mastery where you recognize where maybe when I say lowest level or where it's just down here, it's not to judge anyone, but let's say at a very primal, animalistic, reactionary level where a person might be right here, like a lower vibration and where they're just in stress. And then the next tier up is where there's neutrality a little bit, where you're able to see yourself objectively, but you're not attacking a person. Then the next level up to that might be where, what do I want to express? And this is how I'm going to express myself a little bit better. And the next tier up, which Sam brought up, is that, I'm one with the universe. I'm one with God. I am good. Let God work this out. And I'm not saying in a passive way, like just turn the other cheek. I'm just saying where, like, you recognize that all truly is good right now in your world. And you know that to say something might push someone further away. To say something, you can hurt this woman, such as the one who was commenting on my page, who just lost her child. Like, we were good where we were at. I don't need to make things worse, particularly because I don't know her story. And so I don't want to argue with confusion. I don't want to argue with a person's reaction. If anything, I just want to be compassionate. And if I can experience that oneness without saying something that can hurt her even more, then it's a win-win for both.
Yeah, you don't need to behave like you're on a battlefield and they're an actual enemy trying to kill you, which is how survival instincts. Like, absolutely. It's right. And we do that a lot. We think we feel threatened, and then we want to attack to kill the threat. Essentially, it's dog eat dog.
My dad, I bring him up a lot, but he was in World War II, the Korean War, and 3 tours in Vietnam. And he has been in over 700 missions and more than half in battle. And so this is someone you would think that would be ready to fight. And he was a badass. He was not afraid of anything. And he was an older parent. And what came with him getting older and what came with him becoming more relaxed is that you can see in his eyes that when someone treated him poorly, and he just thought this person was full of shit. I remember being a teenager and he would just look at me like, we both got it. Like, we're going to take our business elsewhere. You know what I mean? It wasn't a big deal for him. I have a funny one to share here. And he said, dude, it is the funniest thing. Okay. So we were in where I grew up, it was very conservative. And, there was a post office, or it was a place that handled your postal needs. And there happened to be a rooster on top of the counter. And it was a farm town also. So there's a lot of chickens and horses and pigs. And my dad just happened to be more matter of fact. He traveled the world, and he said to the lady, he says, did you know that there's a celebration? It's called I think he said Year of the Cock. And the woman said, excuse me, sir. He goes, I don't appreciate your language. He said, well, he said, well, I don't mean to offend you, but there are a lot of cocks in Norco, the town we grew up,
Yeah.
He smiled. He just kind of, wasn't, he looked at me. I just started to laugh. And we just walked out of there, and that was it, but
he didn't get canceled.
What was that?
He didn't get canceled.
He didn't get canceled or sued or was called, toxic masculine or anything like that. Anything like that.
Made me feel things. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what's cool about him is that he knew himself, and he wouldn't really argue with the people. For the most part, he kept it pretty light and humorous. And he wasn't always received because people's seriousness, or just they were just stuck in their own place. They wanted to fight with him. And what's interesting is that he actually was a soldier. Isn't that interesting? He was a soldier.
What I was going to say was, even in the U.S., the military code of conduct, especially at that time, was do not fire unless fired upon. There was still a decorum. There was a demeanor and a set of ethics when it came to battle, where it was we don't start fights, we only finish them. It's only for self-defense, right? It's not to be the conqueror or whatever that energy is, And I think that was ingrained. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one last story is that I used to play in a parody 80s band called the Pac-Men, and Dave Barrios, he was one of my bass players, and he was a third degree black belt in Taekwondo. And one of our outfits was we dressed up as Cobra Kai, like the Karate Kid. And we, at the end of the gig, there was a guy challenging Dave, and he was this guy was drunk, and he was saying like, "Do you know martial arts?" He was like challenging him and being a dick. And Dave could have taken this guy out. First off, he was hammered, but Dave knows how to fight. And Dave said this, and he's also bigger than the guy. Dave said, "Dude, it's all just an act." He goes, "I don't fight. It's just part of the act and whatever." That was it. He actually acted like just like a nice guy. And I looked at him. I said, "Dude, like, wow, like you're amazing." He says, I go, "Why?" He's like, "Fuck, dude." He goes, "I got a wife. I got a couple kids. I want to get home to them. I don't know this guy. I'm not going to hang out and fight with some guy who's drunk." He's like, "I love my family." It was just very easy for him to just go, "I don't care. He can think I'm a pussy when I'm a third degree black belt." It didn't matter because he knows where his values are. And that's the other part. You said, how can we help people understand, how to guide themselves? Well, if you have a really good values, you know what they are, and you always put that in front of making potentially a bad decision, that alone should help you a little bit.
Well, I think the analogy of a martial art is great for this because emotional mastery is a martial art. It's in fact, if I remember when I took some Kung Fu for a little while, and I remember the feeling I started to get where it was as you developed mastery physically, it translated emotionally. It translated and it helped tame those survival instincts through your sense of capacity, like you just felt more prepared. And there was a calmness that came with it. And it's funny how that calmness increased my situational awareness, my perception. I never had any, there was that time I was at your show and someone knocked me out for no reason when I turned my back to them, sucker punched me just because I was too nice. I didn't have that edgy energy. Not that it was justified, but I had to own that part. That's never, that kind of stuff stopped happening, when I went and learned how to show my teeth if necessary. And it's this weird thing is if if it's necessary and you could do it, then it's less likely that you're going to need to. And so that's what that situation made me think of. And so I think of it like with the emotional mastery as well. It's like, if you practice this with yourself, if you practice taking ownership of your pain and not beating yourself about it, but actually compassionately, lovingly looking at it from why, what has brought you pain? Who brought the pain, even having compassion for them and compassion for you, even having to be the witness to it. You give yourself permission to let these emotions go. And that's when the manifestation component really starts to play out, because when that shifts inside you, your external world begins to shift in ways that are really interesting, whether it's you taking new actions, that's on one level, but sometimes you have these, and a lot of times you have these synchronicities, you have situations that improve, and all you did was get into your heart and be truthful with yourself and have compassion, let yourself process those emotions. So that's a martial art. It's a life skill.
Do you want to talk about, by the way, my self-mastery that night?
Well, tell us about your tequila-induced self-mastery.
Oh, God. Let's just say this, that I love Eric. I was more pissed off than anyone there. And I lost my shit.
Yeah, you did.
So there was no self-mastery in that moment. I was so pissed off at this guy doing it. This is also because I felt it was disrespectful. He was invited, as a guest, which was really, really disrespectful. But the interesting thing about that I want to share with the listeners here or people watching this is that Eric was talking to someone's fiance, that fiance was my drummer's sister. So you would think it's safe. We all know each other. Eric always hangs out with me. But the fiance got very insecure because his fiance was smiling when talking to Eric. Eric's pretty smart. It was all like respectful, but this guy was starting to drink and got hammered and got insecure for the fact that maybe his fiance was having a good time with someone else. That's not Eric's problem. But instead of owning it, like, why am I getting insecure? Do I want to punch this guy out and get arrested? Do I want to make myself look like a fool in front of my fiance? Like, what am I really insecure about with this guy? This guy just punched Eric. He wasn't even looking at him like in his face. He just walked up by him and came.
Well, I shook hands with him, said, "Hey, it was good to meet you, brother." And I shook his hand, and he shook my hand, and I let go and turned around. And then when I turned around, he hit me. Well,
that's
that's
coward,
crazy.
But yeah. Well, you see, there's an example, and like, so, I mean, and that, of course, that turned into a lot more problems. You didn't know that. Like the fiance, like, was questioning him, like wanting him to go to therapy. Like, it brought up all kinds of stuff that she didn't see, like, was there, or just denied it. But, it's like, yeah, it can get pretty bad like that, and.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could be of service to his life.
You mean your face could be a service to his life?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we'll go ahead and get this wrapped up on that note. So you and I also know. Oh, I know there's one more thing. Accountability. This is the thing. I was kind of leading with the cultural thing. Kind of my point in bringing that up too is that I think what people are really wanting and looking for is they want to meet other like-minded people that are actually doing this work. That is important, to have, you and I are friends, to have at least a person or two in your life that understands this, that you can maybe do it together, or just have that, you're on that wavelength with them. And you and I have created a group called the Soulful Synergy Seekers that we're just on the verge of launching, and I'll pop a link to it here if you guys want to learn more about that. But why don't you tell us really quick what your vision for the Soulful Synergy Seekers is? This was something you brought to me as an idea. What was your intention behind that, and what do you hope that it will help people to achieve?
Well, to work with me one-on-one is expensive. I'm not accessible to all people. And however, more than ever, people need life and relationship skills. And so Eric and I created this container where people can see what this actually looks like. As an example, I did a quick process with Eric, but he's already done the work. When you see someone going through his or her resistance to where you see them crying and they're discovering something for the first time from a new lens, we all change. We all experience that. Everyone on those calls experiences that change, whether someone's participating or not. So I wanted a way for people to see what is possible. It's one thing for you and I, Eric, to just talk about how great we feel by being coached, or the benefits, or the sharing a testimonial from a client. But when people see how they can literally break through something, it just gives more hope to humanity. And I think we need that more than ever. So that's how I see the group, holding that container for humanity.
Very cool. So what I'll do is I'll put a link here, and we haven't, if you're interested in kind of test driving it, we're offering 30 days in the group for just $7. And if you choose to continue with the group, we have the price. You'll have to check the website for it because that could shift. The price will be there, but it's designed to be a fraction of the cost of what it would be to have like one-to-one coaching with even an average, coach, not alone, yet Ray. And It's going to be somewhere else that we have a community feature built into it. So this is a place where you can find friends and find other people that are doing the work as well. They want to share that in, because our belief is that if you want the world to be a better place, it begins with you. When you have emotional mastery and emotional freedom, and that's showing up in new decisions and moving towards more abundance in your life, you've literally just created a more abundant world by democratic action, okay, through your example. And so we know that people are lacking these containers or these opportunities where you can have that kind of support. And not only that, it's the expertise. One thing you didn't mention, Ray, is they do get one-to-one coaching right there on the calls. So it's not obligatory, but if there's something you want to process, we have this thing called the love seat. So you hop in the love seat, and Ray or myself or someone else will take you through a process to help clear those emotions, get on the other side of it. And we're talking about rapid. Okay, these are very, very fast things. So you don't have to sit there and commiserate and wallow in your emotions for years and years, that you can get through this stuff and experience the growth that you really want on the other side of that. So it's like a tribe with skillful guidance, where you can tap into your true superpowers that are ready and waiting for you right there inside of you. So links right here. Go check it out. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being back on again, Dr. A. Any last words or questions that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't?
No, I'll just share something with the viewers and listeners, is that Eric has interviewed a buddy of mine named Sam, which I brought up already, and also another buddy named Thomas. And I'm sure I'll refer more of my friends to him. The reason why I'm bringing up these two people is because when you hear how they communicate as well, from the same level of consciousness and taking personal responsibility, you can kind of see what we're talking about as far as potentially what you might experience in the community, because these two men who are my buddies also have done the work. They're also coaches. So there are people just like you who are ready to have these really important conversations, and you're not alone.
Thank you. All right. Well, if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop in the comments below, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can rate the show there. And with that, Ray, I will let you get back to your day, and good to have you on.
Thank you, buddy.
All right. See you guys next time.